I had never seen this movie before, but I was fairly certain it had a scene that involved a spirit sucking on someone's toes. Like years ago, I remember seeing a still image of what looked like a spirit crouching down with their face next to someone's feet. And in my mind, if your mouth is that close to someone's foot, the natural progression of things would be to suck their toes. I mean, is that an outlandish conclusion to jump to? I don't know, maybe. But it didn't happen, so I was a little disappointed because I had that expectation. And this is not an admission of my personal foot fetish. In fact, feet really gross me out. I just thought it would have been funny to see. I'm Brandon O. This is Terrorific, and we're chopping up 2020's His House. Welcome back to the place where it's perpetually spooky season. We are continuing our theme of horrible hosts and haunted house guests. His House is the only film this season that I had not previously seen. I started it a couple years ago, but only got about 10 minutes into it before I stopped. It seemed like a heavy film, and at the time, I was in the mood for just some mindless entertainment, and I never went back for some reason. So I made it a point to include it in this Terror B&B lineup so I could force myself to finally watch it. And honestly, it was worth the wait because the twists in this film legitimately shocked me. I was sitting there thinking like, yo, there is absolutely no way they really just did that. How fucked up can someone be? And I'll elaborate more on what that thing was later. If you have not seen His House, it's available to stream on Netflix. But the plot of the film centers around a couple fleeing the civil war occurring in South Sudan, and they become refugees in the UK, only to discover that an evil presence has also moved with them. Topics the film appears to touch on include the refugee experience, culture shock, and the trials and tribulations associated with assimilation, and pushing the boundary for how far one is willing to go in order to survive. So let's dive into things in detail. We have our protagonist couple, husband Bol and wife Rial. In an early scene in the film, we see them in a detention center being held by immigration as they seek asylum. And they're told as they meet with this panel that they must meet certain conditions 100% of the time or risk deportation. They must report in weekly, and they will be sent to a home of immigration's choosing, and they're not allowed to live anywhere else. They will also be given weekly financial support of a whopping £74, and they do not have permission to work or supplement earnings by other means. Now currently, the exchange rate for £74 is the equivalent of $100 and 46 cents. How can one person, yet alone two, be expected to live on $100 per week? Low-key, this sounds like a game MAGA Jigsaw would put on. Like, stay here and starve, or go back to where you came from and be ethnically cleansed. You have 30 seconds to decide. But that's the thing with political optics, isn't it? Optics is the key word. You only have to give a visual illusion that you're doing something humanitarian. Like, hey, are you tired of rockets blowing up in your backyard? Come on over here to the gleaming west, trade in that shrapnel for crippling poverty. And as a bonus, we won't allow you to work your way out of it. But I digress. After having their request for asylum approved, Bol and Rial are then shuttled to their new home, and as they're on the bus, they ask the driver where they're going. Very basic, simple question, and they get no response at all. Like, imagine being in a completely foreign land and you're being driven somewhere. Like, how terrifying must that be? When they arrive, the bus driver throws their bags on the ground quite unceremoniously, and that kind of sets the stage for how most characters in this film are going to be treating Rial and Bol. There's another man that's waiting at the house there to greet them, and he tells them that normally the house would be half the size with twice as many people living in it, but this one is quote unquote all for you. But Bol asks, why are we so special? And this dude says, you must have won the jackpot. Congratulations, you have won this total shithole. The lights won't turn on. The house wasn't even clean first. There's like old pizza sitting out with maggots just going to town on it. And I know it smells like absolute ass in there. That probably explains why they go outside pretty quickly. They start to explore and look around, and they come across a neighbor who happens to be white, and he tells them they'll be alright as long as they quote unquote make it easy for people and be one of the good ones. And I found myself wondering, not for the final time in this film, was this dude referring to immigrants or black people? And the answer is yes. And speaking of being one of the good ones, a couple years ago I went to a wedding. It was me, 3 of my homies, and 2 of their wives. So the 6 of us in total made up the entire black delegation at this wedding. Just to give you an idea of the kind of environment we were in. And so the 4 of us guys are like, we're friends of the groom. And to his credit, he tells us ahead of time, he's like, hey, just so y'all know, there's going to be a family member there who honestly is racist. You're just like, oh, okay, well, thanks for the heads up. Appreciate that. And on wedding day, he points the guy out so we know what he looks like. And we steer clear of him. We don't want any smoke or any distractions from this special day, right? So we're off on our own, and we see this person begin to approach us. And he walks up, doesn't introduce himself, doesn't say anything, friendly or inviting, which, I guess we shouldn't expect since he's openly racist. But he's like, any of y'all boys got some weed? Like, of all the people in this venue, he finds the 4 black guys, makes a straight beeline for us. And I know he was just thinking to himself, like, these people, they must have the stickiest of the icky, because that's what they do. And I'm trying not to laugh. It's funny to me, but we're like, no, we don't have any, we don't do anything like that. And he genuinely looked surprised. And I was like, yeah, we're actually some of the good ones. And you may be thinking like, Brandon, by doing that and saying things like that, you are just reinforcing the backwards beliefs that these people already have. And you're probably right about that. But from my vantage point, if these people were like alive during Jim Crow, you know what I mean? If MLK's speeches themselves could not convince them of equality, what the fuck chance do I have? So, rather than waste my time and my energy fighting a losing battle, I'm just gonna troll and laugh about it and entertain myself. But yeah, dude walked away looking hella disappointed, and we just were like, damn, that was crazy. And we sparked one up. I'm kidding. But anyway, back to the movie. Spooky shit starts happening in the house. In the middle of the night, Bol is awakened from his sleep because he hears like some mysterious humming going on downstairs. And he really shows that he's trying to fully embrace the culture because he goes to investigate. And while he's down there, he gets something thrown at him, and he hears laughter and like running footsteps. There's like thudding and skittering sounds coming from behind the wall. And he sees a hole there, so he decides to lay down on the ground and take a peek inside of it. This random dark hole, which again, there have been thudding and skittering sounds emanating from it. Now this is some real WPS, okay? Bro is fully trying to assimilate. And this desire to assimilate is further demonstrated when, in a following scene, Bol is walking around the town exploring things, and he comes across a man at a church who's like, hey, are you one of those refugees? Come on in, I got something for you. And it's, he's a little bit reticent about it because he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he goes inside and the man gives him a care package, surprisingly, and it has like toiletries and all this stuff. There's a group of men in there watching a soccer match, and they're singing a song about their favorite player, Peter Crouch. And Bol starts singing the song with them, really trying to fit in. Nothing says you're one of the good ones like supporting the local football club. But this commitment to trying to be accepted creates a fundamental disconnect between him and Rial. Bol is always looking towards the future while Rial is stuck ruminating on the past. She's often shown sitting alone with their daughter's things, like an old doll, an old necklace, etc. And through a flashback, we see that while crossing the Mediterranean to come over to the UK, their boat capsized and their young daughter drowned tragically. But the haunted house antics continue. Wallpaper begins to peel off the wall, exposing yet another hole, providing this image of a wound with the band-aid just slapped over it. And Bol finds a cable in there because once again, he reaches his hand inside of there on some WPS. But he finds a cable in there, begins pulling it, and as he pulls more of it out, the cable is covered in something wet, looks like seaweed or something, and a specter creeps up behind him. And at the end of this cable is a doll, the same doll that Rial has been playing with that belonged to their daughter. And then hands reach out and pull the doll back into the hole, and he hears humming coming from inside the wall yet again. Bro, like, how are you experiencing all this and not saying a word to anybody? I would immediately be running upstairs, waking Rial up, being like, son, there's some wild shit happening in this house. But dude is just if I ignore it long enough, maybe it will stop. Because yes, things like that work. But while Bol slowly unravels due to his encounters with these paranormal entities, Rial begins to slowly unravel herself due to encounters with the living. And sometimes it be your own people that ain't rocking with you. Rial goes out looking for a clinic and gets lost, and along the way she sees a few white kids but doesn't feel comfortable asking them for directions. Eventually she comes across a group of black kids and asks them, and all three give her different directions. And they troll her, including mocking her accent, eventually telling her to go back to Africa. And this makes Rial realize that she's truly alone in this strange place, and it leads her to fully lean into her roots and her foundational culture. As she eventually makes her way to the clinic, the woman working there, who also happens to be white and is doing Rial's blood work, she calls her scarification markings pretty, and Rial tells her the real shit. She says one set of scars was given to her by her tribe when she was a girl, and the second set she gave herself later on after her family was massacred by the rival tribe. She gave herself these rival markings so that no matter which side of the conflict found her, she could claim to be with them. It's survival by any means. But the clinic worker goes uncomfortably silent. She doesn't say a single word, but her expression says so much. I basically saw a thought bubble pop over her head that said something like, "This is what I get for trying to be nice to one of them." And again, is she referring to immigrants or black people? The answer is yes. Her expression was like this look of almost disgust, like, how dare you make me feel this way? How dare you take me out of my comfort zone? I, and people who look like me, allow you to exist in this space with us as long as you do not compromise our comfort. And you have done that, so now fuck you. And anytime I see things like this, actors in these minor roles kind of express something so palpable, I always wonder, does this unknown actor need to be cast immediately in all this other shit because they're so phenomenal? Or are they not acting at all and just relying on their natural instincts for how they would behave in that situation? And depending on how cynical you are, I guess that could be a rhetorical question. But all I know is when they inevitably reboot or remake 12 Years a Slave, they need to call up old dude from The Wedding. Okay? Because he will be a phenomenal extra. But up until this point, the spooky stuff that had been happening at home had been happening to only Bol, but now Rial starts to experience it as well. She brings some groceries back to the house, and one of the bags tips over by itself, spilling fruit on the ground. And one rolls on its own towards that weird hole in the wall, while a mysterious voice ominously tells Rial to come here. And she looks shook, but she's not reaching her hand in that wall. Nope, not like Bol did. No WPS for her. But I think this is also reflective of Rial's hesitance to assimilate, which Bol does not share. And later that night, Rial makes dinner and begins eating with her hands. Bol brings her a knife and a fork. She tries it, but she says all I can taste is the metal, and he tells her she'll eventually get used to it. He even broaches the subject of starting a family, which, side note, is a very interesting choice of words. He doesn't say something like maybe we can try again, etc. But this conversation serves as an inflection point in Bol and Rial's marriage. There's a fundamental disconnect there. It becomes apparent that Bol thinks that this move now is permanent. He wants to stay here, put down roots here, have children here. Meanwhile, Rial, maybe in the back of her mind, always thought that once things settled down, they would go back to South Sudan. And she also knows that something just isn't right here, and thinks that Bol is deliberately avoiding the truth. The circumstances differ in the level of open and physical violence, but the core tenet is the same. They've left one place where they were hated because they belonged to a certain group, only to land in a new place where they're still hated because they belong to a certain group. And Rial is not oblivious to Bol's strange behavior. It's kind of hard to be when bro goes to the hardware store and buys a shit ton of hammers and just starts beating the fuck out of the walls, trying to see what's causing all these creepy noises. And as a reminder, they only have a stipend of $100 per week, and Mans blew half of it on hammers. So Rial is pretty confident that Bol has been seeing the spooky shit too, so she tells him a story that her mother told her about an entity known as an apeth, which is a night witch. The story goes that once lived a poor man who wanted a house so badly that he stole from others. One day he stole from an old man that lived by the river, and that man turned out to be an apeth. And after the poor man built his home, the apeth followed and had spirits live in the man's walls. The apeth would not cease tormenting the man until he was completely consumed. Sounds kind of familiar. Rial thinks an apeth rose from the ocean when they lost their daughter and has followed them, and that their daughter's spirit still lives on. But Bol thinks they've grieved enough, and he wants to move on. And after this, things begin to escalate even more. Bol sees their ghost daughter aggressively stabbing the ground with a knife, and he kind of loses it. He's like, man, fuck it. He says they've been marked, so he burns everything they brought with them from South Sudan, including the literal shirt off his back and the necklace from their daughter that Rial had been wearing. By the way, that necklace is later returned to Rial by that ghost, and she's so casual about it, bro. That could not be me. But this is where I really started to get the sense that Bol was running from something more than just the war. I had thought that his desire to assimilate was more of a survival tactic, but seeing him trying to cut all ties to their past life and culture made it seem like he was hiding something. After a particularly harrowing encounter with the spirits in the house, where they jump Bol and try to slit his throat, dude kind of spirals out. He starts yelling, "This is my house," starts beating the walls even more with the hammer, and he goes to social services or immigration, whatever the office is, and he's trying to get them to switch to a new house. He says there are rats in the walls and gets all kinds of comments that are just like dripping with resentment. You know, the workers tell them that his house is bigger than theirs, and that if he tries to formally switch, it's going to lead to an inquiry, and people are going to start asking questions like, why isn't he adapting? Why is he biting the hand that feeds him? There's this notion that as an immigrant, one should be grateful to be served a platter of shit, and that the almighty, altruistic savior should be praised for doing less than the bare minimum. But Bol doesn't want to risk being sent back, so he's like, never mind, forget I said anything. But they show up to the house anyway. And they walk in and they threaten to report them for all the damage that's being done to the walls. And Bol's like, no, please, we're not going back. Remember, we're one of the good ones. But as he says that, Rial strolls into the room and straight snitches on this dude, bro. She's like, hey, have you told them about the witch though? And they're just like, what the fuck? Like, okay, that's our cue. And so they leave. And then Rial drops an absolute bar on Bol's head. She's like, quote, this is what they want. They like to see us crazy. It makes them feel like big men. They don't want to be reminded that it is them that are weak, how poor and lazy and bored they are. End quote. Drop mic. And then she picks the mic back up and she calls Bol out for idolizing them and quote unquote thanking them for the unseasoned scraps they throw at us. And she says she's going back home with or without him. And his response is totally healthy. He removes all the handles and knobs from the doors and windows to prevent her from leaving. Finally, Bol has broken. He has reached his limit and finally accepted that ignoring this is not going to make it go away. He has to confront it. And so he tries to summon the Apeth. And he's successful in doing so. And it tells him that his life is not his, that he stole it and must repay what he owes. He tells him that he must trade his life for Nyagak's, their daughter. And Bol discovers that the Apeth cannot physically hurt him, but it can place him in a trance and psychologically torture him. It has the ability to conjure spirits and to alter its target's perception of reality. It transports Bol to the ocean where Nyagak crawls out from under the water and an octopus crawls out of her mouth. Yikes, that'll fuck anybody up. And Rial finds Bol sitting on the couch in a catatonic state, and this man has pissed his pants. But she takes this as her opportunity to escape, and she makes a run for it. And she runs straight into the Apeth's dream world, where he transports her back home to South Sudan, where she's in a room surrounded by women from her tribe. She feels the love, she feels relief to be back home. But she knows it's not real, and she tries to act all tough. She's saying she knows it's a dream and demands to know where her daughter is. And the Apeth, who has taken the form of an elder, is like, who? And then we cut to a flashback, and the circumstances under which Bol and Rial fled South Sudan are made clear to the audience. Bol finds Rial fresh after she has discovered her family's massacre and decides that, okay, now we gotta leave. So they eventually reach some shuttles that are taking refugees out of the country. But it quickly reaches capacity. They'll only let children on. And Bol is like begging, like, hey, please, like, let us on. He's like right there at the door. And they're like, no, kids only. So he looks down, sees a kid standing next to him, a random kid, a kid who is notably not his kid. Grabs that kid and is like, I have a kid right here. And that gets them onto the shuttle. Bro. When I saw this, like, I was legitimately shocked. I was like, what is happening right now? There is no way that dude just did that. Like, I cannot even fathom the amount of desperation one must be feeling in order to kidnap a child and use that child as their fake daughter in order to escape persecution. So now we know that Nyagak is not really their daughter. But the worst and most heartbreaking thing is her mom doesn't make it on the shuttle. And so she's just running behind it, screaming her head off as Nyagak cries for her mom in return. And they just never see each other again. And the mom has no idea what happened to her. She never was able to even get that closure, assuming she even survived the Civil War. And Rial just sits there and allows it all to happen. Doesn't say a word. So this adds an entirely new layer to the capsizing incident and this subsequent drowning. Once they're in the water, Bol is only concerned with saving himself and Rial because that is who he sees as his family. Nyagak is just some random kid he stole. He doesn't care about her. And so he allows her to drown in a situation that she never should have been in to begin with. That is hella shitty, and explains why the Apeth has been haunting him, and it's completely warranted and justified. The Apeth then slides a knife over to Rial and offers her a deal if she severs the flesh of Bol he'll give her what she wants, returning Nyagak to her. But it's not really about Nyagak at all. It's about releasing Rial from the burden of the guilt she buried so deeply. But this leads us to the final confrontation. After finding Rial laying outside on the ground dreaming, Bol brings her back inside and they sit at the table. Bol grabs a knife and slashes his own arm to bring the Apeth to him. He says that he should have tried harder to save Nyagak in the water. And bro, you missed the entire point. She should have never been with you to begin with. You kidnapped her and stole her from her mother, her only family. But Bol tells Rial to leave to go save herself, and the Apeth does show up to claim Bol. This thing shoves its entire hand inside of Bol's cut, ew. But Rial rejects the offer to escape and to have Nyagak back with her, and she comes to Bol's aid, grabs that knife that's on the ground and slashes the Apeth's throat, and it dies. Talk about a true ride or die. And I don't know if any lessons were learned here because they kind of lived happily ever after. So after all that, at its heart, is his house truly just an unconventional love story? A couple overcoming family massacres, the war, kidnapping, manslaughter, hauntings, poverty, racism, general prejudice, but coming out the other side stronger than ever. What a great PSA for marriage, huh? But I enjoyed the film, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it. Let me know about any themes or messages or symbols I may have missed, or if your interpretations of things were any different. Drop a comment on whatever platform you're listening on and let's discuss. And on a final note, this is officially an award-nominated podcast, so that's pretty cool. Voting is now open for the first annual Sacred Crypt Awards, and Terrorific has been nominated for the Rising Star Award. So if you feel so inclined to vote, you can head on over to Instagram, check out my page. I have a highlighted story. It's like a little neon green thing, and you'll see the link to vote. Or you can go to the Instagram page of Voices from the Mausoleum and vote there. And even if you don't vote for me, you'll still get exposed to other indie horror content creators, so you can continue to expand within the community. Voting closes on August 25th. And that's all for me. I'm out of here. But in the meantime, remember, always keep it spooky.